Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. I need to run down to the coffee shop because I'm still doing my test prep. I have like this very specific kind of like routine every day now where I wake up really early and I work, and then in the middle of the day I go to the coffee shop, and then I come back and then I go like watch my cousins play sports. It's actually pretty cool, and that's one of those things where I'm like, I definitely want my kid to go to high school in the US just so they can do sports, which is like such an American thing, but it's like one of the only things I like about America. Okay, so today, I really thought about this a lot, like, last night before I went to bed, and then I also went for a walk. So I have, like, this productivity obsession that I've had most of my life, except for the time I lived in Finland, and then I came back because I went back to the US, but it also existed in Kyrgyzstan and Armenia a little bit, too. Where I feel like if I have downtime, I need to be like talking to somebody or doing something categorically productive. If I can't talk to somebody, I'm usually listening to YouTube videos. So like I do try to stay in touch with my friends and family. I have a lot of family who doesn't live near me, who I do call like almost daily, mostly my aunt and my grandmother. But yesterday I didn't really have time to talk to anybody, or rather they didn't have time to talk to me. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, I went for a walk, and then I started, doing the thing I used to do when I was going running, because I'm not currently running, which is very dumb of me. And just, my mind started wandering. I started thinking about things. And I started thinking about the concept of going to therapy. Why did I start thinking about this? Because, for instance, this happens with a lot of my best friends where it's like, we'll be like super tight and we'll be talking every day, and then all of a sudden they just disappear and I have no idea what happened. And I'm like, what's going on here? And so that happened recently with my one best friend who I was traveling a lot with, and I'm like, come on, what am I, like, what do we call it? Dead meat? Yeah, or something. That's the expression. Or chopped liver is the other thing they say. Yeah, I think chopped liver, that's what dead meat is, not right. What am I, chopped liver over here? Like when somebody forgets about you, that's an expression that we use. For all of my, Russian speakers trying to learn English from this chopped liver, it's a good one. And so I'm like, okay, I haven't heard from her, whatever. And then I kind of started thinking about, I feel like one of the issues becomes that people start having their own problems, and then they feel like I don't want to talk to somebody else about their problems because I can't take on that additional stress. And then right after that, I started listening to, again, Healthy Gamer Gigi, talking about how to be more emotionally available, because, I was like, yeah, it's probably something I have a hard time with too, if I'm being very honest, because if your parents never teach you how to be emotionally available, apparently you like don't know how to do that. And I was like, that makes sense. Okay, gotcha. So anyway, I started listening to that, and he started talking about like this negativity concept and how sharing in somebody's negativity, even though like, yes, by somebody talking about something negative, you are taking on that negativity. It's like holding part of that person's negativity is actually helping them. And I started thinking about how this is a skill that I think a lot of people don't have. And I've said this the whole time I was in Finland. I was like, the thing I don't like about Americans is that they're very like emotionally unintelligent. I would probably use less kind words, but whatever, for the purpose of, airing this, I'm going to say Americans struggle a lot with emotional regulation, emotional intimacy, like anything emotional. And I'm going to contrast this with like one story from when I was studying in Kyrgyzstan, and one of my, like, I had these one-on-one Russian classes, and one of them, she's explaining how when I was in Russia, it was like Kyrgyz teacher I had. When I was in Russia one time, I broke up with my boyfriend, and my Russian friend is like, you know what, we're gonna get together tonight and we're gonna drink. And I was like, cool. So my point is with that, it's like, I feel like maybe like in Russian culture, people are a lot more supportive in like some way emotionally. When people are going through something tough, they're like, oh, my friend is going through something hard, we need to like get together and like have a good time and make them feel better. And like, I'm not really sure that Americans feel that same kind of responsibility for their friends. Now, I think that goes back to kind of this collectivist versus individualistic concept that I was talking about in my Russian video, comparing Finns, Russians, and Americans the other day. Because, that is a thing where Americans are very like independent. And I think also Americans don't really like to be as vulnerable. Like, we're gonna act like everything's okay even when it's not, and we're like taught to do that, and we're rewarded for behaving that way. We are rewarded for emotional suppression, which is why a lot of people are emotionally unavailable. And obviously I'm speaking in very general terms, but it's just because I have that experience seeing what it's like from other cultures, I think that this is one of the things that I've seen be a struggle for people here. Yeah. So, I again started thinking about like I feel like one of the things, and I'm guilty of this too, to be perfectly honest with you, is that people will get to this point where they're kind of like, oh, I'm feeling like, okay, as an example, like my one friend who I'm currently, I don't know where she went, honestly, the one best friend, for a while, she was just having like the same issue over and over again. And at a point, I do get to a point where I'm like, I can listen to you, but I don't have any other like advice or constructive feedback to give you other than what I've already said. And I can say it again, but that's all I have. And so then sometimes you get to a point where, TBH, you get sick of hearing the same thing over and over again. And then you're just like, have you tried going to a therapist? And, you know, I've had people say this to me too when I'm having an issue. Have you tried going to a therapist? I think it's also hard to justify going to, I'm pro therapy, by the way. That's not the point of this. But like, I think that sometimes it's hard to justify going to therapy when you know what the problem is and you know how to fix it. Because recently in the last year, the problem that we kept discussing in therapy was, you need to move out of your parents' house. And I'm like, I know. And no amount of me sitting here talking about all my problems stemming from living at home is going to change the fact that I still live at home. So sometimes it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to go out and like complete the action steps required to get you there. So yeah, and you know, another thing, this is very funny. So because I had this conference, I have all this stupid expense reporting, which is literally, I don't think there are a lot of things that I hate more than expense reporting, like to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to another conference next year because I don't want to do expense reporting and I don't want to do a presentation for it. And I'm tired and I don't even care that they give me $75 a day for food. Not worth it. Not worth all the added stress, which they did. But then I fell asleep, so I couldn't even use it one day. It was so stupid. Whatever. But honestly, if you feed yourself twice in a day, $75 goes real quick, especially if you got to leave a tip somewhere. Ugh, yeah, that was a problem on Monday, especially. But I think I was still under 75. Whatever. So I talked to my uncle, who apparently has done expense reporting, and he's like, if it's a $5 difference, don't worry. The company's probably not going to care. And I'm like, what a relief. And he's like, I would just get it done with as soon as possible. But there was some stupid issue I was having with it where the hotel charged me the wrong amount and I had like two of the same receipt, but I needed two of the different receipts. Like what actually went to the credit card was different, blah, 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 not important. But I was talking to my grandmother about it. I'm like, this is so annoying, blah, blah, complaining. She's like, you know, I don't want to listen to this right now. And I had to like stop myself and be like, my grandmother is going through something really hard right now because unfortunately my grandfather is pretty sick. So I think a lot of her, anyway, instead of her probably openly talking about it being really hard for her, which I know she's like not doing because that's not how she is, she's just like reacting to somebody sharing negativity with her in that way. And so I kind of had to stop and be like, okay, that's what's going on, and just being like sensitive to that. That's a skill that I don't know where I got it from, but it came from somewhere, and I really had to think about that. So I don't know, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, in the US, like, people are very, like, oh, everybody just needs to go to therapy and independently deal with their problems, whereas one of the things I really like about, you know, more collectivist societies is that people really feel like sharing problems with each other is, like, a way to draw closer, and in the US, it's such a taboo that, like, you can't really get to that deeper level of connection with people, which I think is like one of the things that I start having an issue with whenever I come back to the US. Like in Finland, like I won't meet with people for very long or very frequently at this point because of how much I'm working and how much crap I have to do while I'm over there, usually like legal stuff and extending residence permit. What else was I even doing? I don't know, going to the doctors, annoying things. But the discussions I'll have with people, it's like I feel like they're pretty deep, like pretty quickly, and you're like actually sharing things about your worldview, and like, that's just, like, not something that happens here. And also, people don't really have a worldview because they don't really, like, leave the U.S. usually. So, I don't know. What is my whole point with this? Is just, you know, there's not really a culture here of being emotionally available, even for your friends. And because this was an issue I started having earlier in the week, where I was telling my brother that, like, oh, I'm feeling really out of sorts. And I think this is the first time I've been somewhere where it's, like, I don't have 500 people trying to, like, hang out with me. Or I don't have 500 things to do. Well, that's not really true. I do have 500 things to do. I'm just trying to stay focused on the ones I actually have to do. But, like, he's just explaining how it's like you need to have people who you have, like, a vested interest in their life and you share values and you can, like, be yourself more or less. Because, yeah, that is a challenge, is, like, the close relationships I do have here, if I'm not acting a certain way, I'm going to put it like that, or I'm expressing something that's dissident in their mind, it could create conflict. So, you know, like one of my friends from Finland currently lives in the US. My brother's like, just try to call her more, but I don't know that that's really working because she gets very like tired after work and then doesn't want to talk to anybody, and like she's got her own issues. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like people kind of have their own problems, and so it's really hard for them to take on other people's problems. And like, yes, maybe this is a universal thing that happens, but I just think that there's a lot of separation. And again, I talk about this, like people drive their own cars, people live in their own big houses very separate from each other. Like there's just a lot less of a lack of integration socially, I feel like, in the US than in a lot of different places. So that's kind of that. I'm not even really sure what else to add to that at this point, but that was sort of my train of thought, was just like, it's rough out there. Another thing I kind of wanted to talk about, because, and this is not really related to this, but I'm going to try to make some sort of loose connection. I was listening to a YouTube video today about how to get rich, because this is my passive listening, and this guy's from the UK, and he's talking about, he's like, I think wanting to be rich is frowned upon in the UK and Canada, but not as much in the US. And I was like, I don't really know if I agree with that, but he was talking about how in order to get to that point, it does have to be like an obsession and a goal. And I was like, okay, I don't know. So like I did kind of start thinking about that, and he's like, if you're not willing to like sacrifice a lot of things to get to that point, then maybe it's not the goal for you. And I started thinking about like, what are things that I've been that obsessed with that I've been able to like do them? Studying Russian. And then like I couldn't really think, and buying a house. It's not a house, it's an apartment, but it doesn't matter. So, I think, okay, my point is, I think there was some validity to that, like, not even just about the getting rich thing, but, like, if you dedicate enough, like, very, like, focused time, effort, and energy onto one thing, I think it is possible to achieve it. And I guess it made me think more about my goals, because I did start thinking about whether, like, pursuing wealth, like, it was talking about, like, what are the reasons you pursue wealth? One woman was wanting to pursue wealth because to like help her parents out, which I kind of get that, because I also do feel that way, even though I feel like I've already significantly helped my parents out less than I've seen a lot of other people do, but it's one thing I think about. Some people are like, they want to make it so they never have to work a day in their lives again. Cool, maybe, I don't know. Like, I do like working just inherently because I like working sometimes. Keyword sometimes, but like, I do a whole PhD program and don't get paid for it. That's not normal. That just means I like doing the thing, which I do need to look for funding, speaking of which, and I am going to start doing that soon. But yeah, just being like very like one track mind in terms of like actually getting something. I thought there was some validity in this, and if you're not like obsessed with getting that thing, then you can't sit back and wonder like why you didn't get that thing. So I don't know, how am I trying to tie this to like going to therapy? I just started thinking maybe about the reasons why people go to therapy. Since I listen, okay, the other thing is this guy is talking about, like, you can tell a lot by somebody's feed, like, what they care about, right? And I was like, my feed is, like, probably just, like, relationship video things, but more from, like, a psychiatric perspective. And then the other one is, like, wealth management. But I feel like the wealth management is only as a result of me really wanting to have a stable place to live. So once that is reached, am I really going to keep caring about that? And I also feel like with the relationship thing, where I've had periods of time where I've been in like nice, stable, boring relationships, I don't really care about that. So it's kind of like, once you reach that goal, what amount of work are you going to put into maintaining that versus just kind of crapping out and giving up? And it's a good question, and I don't really know the answer to it. And that's the point with therapy, is like, sometimes with therapy you use it until you reach the therapeutic objective or goal, as it's been posited to me. And then once you get there, you can kind of take a break and then just do something else. So that's everything that I can think of related to that. And now it's time for me to go do my coffee stuff. All right, until next time. Bye.